Good afternoon. Happy Friday. We are once again seeing strong evidence that the American dream is back and real under President Trump's leadership. Based on today's jobs report, the president's economic policies of historic tax cuts and deregulation are working. The Obama administration was losing around 1,000 jobs a month in the manufacturing industry, but since the president's election, manufacturing jobs have increased by 275,000. Over 300,000 jobs were created in February alone, bringing the total number of jobs created since President Trump was elected to nearly 3 million. The federal government is getting out of the way, and the American people are innovating, building, and creating jobs. In other news today, the president has pardoned Christian Saucier, a Navy submariner. Mr. Saucier was 22 years old at the time of his offenses and has served out his 12-month sentence. He has been recognized by his fellow service members for his dedication, skill, and patriotic spirit. While serving, he regularly mentored younger sailors and served as an instructor for new recruits. The sentencing judge found that Mr. Saucier's offense stands in contrast to his commendable military service. The president is appreciative of Mr. Saucier's service to the country. With that, I will take your questions. John.
Sarah, what are the considerations that are under discussion for the location that this meeting between the president and Kim Jong Un would take place?
Yeah, as we said last night, a time and place have not yet been determined. We'll certainly make those announcements when more decisions and more information is available on that front.
What are the considerations that are under discussion for where this could take place? I mean, I take it you wouldn't want to have it in downtown Pyongyang.
Yeah, and we're not going to have those conversations between me and you and the press. Those will be conversations that take place at a much higher level and certainly outside of this room.
John, sure. The South Korean National Security Advisor said that the U.S. responded positively to a South Korean request for a waiver on the steel tariffs. Can you tell us where you are on that?
As the president's proclamation said yesterday, there were two countries that were specifically excluded, and there would be the opportunity for us to negotiate on matters of national security with other countries, and we're going to be doing that with a number of different countries. John.
Sir, does the president think that Kim Jong Un is sincere about talking about denuclearization?
The president is hopeful that we can make some continued progress. Well, look, what we know is that the maximum pressure campaign has clearly been effective. We know that it has put a tremendous amount of pressure on North Korea, and they have made some major promises. They've made promises to denuclearize. They've made promises to stop nuclear and missile testing, and they've recognized that regular military exercises between the U.S. and its ally, South Korea, will continue. The maximum pressure campaign, we're not letting up. We're not going to step back or make any changes to that. We're going to continue in that effort, and we're not going to have this meeting take place until we see concrete actions that match the words and the rhetoric of North Korea.
But does he think that Kim Jong Un can be trusted as a negotiating partner?
Well, look, we're not in the negotiation right now. We've accepted the invitation to talk based on them following through with concrete actions on the promises that they've made.
And if I can just ask you just one other thing. Lindsey Graham said about this news. He said, a word of warning to North Korean President Kim Jong Un, the worst possible thing you can do with Donald Trump in person is to meet with him in person and try to play him. If you do that, it will be the end of you and your regime. Is Lindsey Graham reading the president correct on that? Is that
I think that Lindsey Graham knows that President Trump is one of the best negotiators, and certainly I think that he has great confidence in his ability and is glad that he'll be the one at the table for the United States. I think Senator Graham has been on the other side of that and certainly knows the capabilities and the determination of President Trump. Jeff.
Sarah, why did the president accept this invitation without any preconditions? For example, without demanding that the North Koreans release the 3 Americans that are being held there?
Look, that's something that we're going to continue advocating for and pushing for, but let's not forget that the North Koreans did promise something. They've promised to denuclearize, they've promised to stop nuclear and missile testing, and they've recognized that we're going to continue in our military exercises. Let's be very clear, the United States has made 0 concessions, but North Korea has made some promises, and again, this meeting won't take place without concrete actions that match the promises that have been made by North Korea.
I wanted to follow up on that because you just said that now. Do you think that a 2-month time period is enough time to make sure that they will actually fulfill those promises? He said he wants to do it by May.
Look, we're working on the determination of the time, but let's not be lost in the fact that this didn't happen overnight. This maximum pressure campaign and this process has been ongoing since the president first took office. For the first time in a long time, the United States is actually having conversations from a position of strength, not a position of weakness like the one that North Korea finds itself in due to the maximum pressure campaign.
Does that mean it might not be May?
Again, we haven't set a time or a location. Those things have yet to be determined.
Sarah, you said they promised to denuclearize. Have they promised to denuclearize, or have they promised to talk about denuclearizing?
The understanding, the message from the South Korean delegation is that they would denuclearize, and that is what our ultimate goal has always been, and that will have to be part of the actions that we see them take.
After?
We have to see concrete and verifiable actions take place.
Sarah,
Yes.
Before the meeting.
Yeah.
Sarah, isn't the president giving Kim Jong Un exactly what he wants, which is respect and stature on the international stage?
Not at all. I think that the president is getting exactly what he wants. He is getting the opportunity to have the North Koreans actually denuclearize. Look, you have to remember, nothing is changing from the United States position. We're going to continue the maximum pressure campaign. We're going to continue working with our allies and partners to do that, and we're going to continue to ask them to step up and do more. Nothing is changing from our side when it comes to this conversation.
There's no guarantee this will be any more than a photo op. Kim Jong Un gets his equal footing, in his view, on the world stage with the leader of the free world, and the president gets nothing.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that the president's getting nothing when we've already said, and frankly I've said it many times since walking in here in the last 10 minutes, that the president will not have the meeting without seeing concrete steps and concrete actions take place by North Korea. So the president would actually be getting something, and frankly, the world would be getting something. If we can get to a place where North Korea is denuclearizing, that is a massive step, and it's something that will make the entire globe much safer. And even President Moon has said that this is because of the leadership of President Trump.
And one softball question, which is, and I apologize for that, which is, given the economic news and the North Korea news, what words would you describe would you use to describe the president's mood right now?
The president's in a great mood. The president's been in a great mood because we've had not just a successful couple of days, we've had a successful year, and we're very focused on making sure we have 7 more.
Sarah, thank you. Top officials at the White House and at the Pentagon seem to be taken by surprise by the announcement. Was this done in a haphazard way?
Not at all. As I said, that this has been part of an ongoing campaign that's been going for over a year. And just because some of the individuals that they regularly leak to the press weren't involved in the conversation doesn't mean that the appropriate parties that lead those agencies were not in the room and not part of that discussion.
The president came here to the briefing room, though, before reaching out to the president of China. Is that appropriate? Should he not have reached out to his international partners first before making an announcement here?
Look, we've had ongoing conversations with leaders across the world. The president simply said there would be an announcement. He had several conversations with world leaders both last night and today.
Are you aware he would make this decision beforehand?
Again, the president had conversations with a few of world leaders both last night and today. This is something that all of these countries have been working together on, and something that we're going to continue to work with our allies and partners on.
Was the Secretary of State aware that he was going to make that decision, Sarah?
Yeah, and the Secretary of State's deputy was in the room at the time these conversations went on, so it's absurd to pretend like they weren't part of this process and haven't been part of this process all along. Jeff?
Sarah, to follow on what Peter was asking, how will the President and the United States be able to verify this before the meeting? How will they be able to verify the denuclearization?
That's something that will be determined through the national security and intelligence community. Certainly not something I would read out to you guys from here.
The President has said repeatedly that previous presidents, his predecessors, have mishandled this and misplayed this. Why can he be so confident that this is the right move when just in October he was telling his own Secretary of State it would be a waste of time to to talk directly?
Well, I think it's really clear that they've misplayed it, or we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. The president wouldn't be having to clean up the mistakes of the previous 3 administrations. The president is getting promises out of North Korea that haven't been made in any recent years. And again, we are going to continue the maximum pressure campaign to make sure that they follow through on these commitments. John?
Who would he like to have with
Sorry,
him
I'm
at the
going to keep
meeting?
moving.
If I could just ask, who would he like to have with him at the meeting? His Secretary of State, I mean, there is not an ambassador now in South Korea. Does he plan to step up more before this meeting?
Look, the president has an incredible team that is surrounding him, both from National Security Advisor, Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the intelligence community. But at the end of the day, the ultimate person to lead that negotiation or that conversation and be at the table will be the president. John.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. The North Korean government has made promises before. They've reneged on those promises in 2 prior administrations. What's different now? Why should we trust Kim Jong Un now?
Again, because the United States is going to continue that maximum pressure campaign. We are making no concessions, and we are not going to move forward until we see concrete and verified actions taking place by North Korea. We are also operating from a position of strength that we haven't had in previous administrations due to the maximum pressure campaign, not just by the United States. Let's not forget that a lot of our allies and partners like China, South Korea, Japan have stepped up and done infinitely more over the past year due to the president's leadership than they have in the previous administration. So this is a collective effort to put that pressure on North Korea, and it's going to continue. North Korea is in a place of weakness, and that is certainly recognized by the promises that they've made through this conversation. Francesca?
Has starved his own people. He's murdered his own people. You could say he's responsible for the death of Otto Warmbier. Why put him on the same stage as the President of the United States?
The president wants to make sure that we denuclearize the peninsula and that we're securing and helping have a safer world. I'm glad that you guys are acknowledging a lot of the problems of North Korea, because just a couple of weeks ago, a lot of members in the press were actually elevating North Korea and some of the members of the regime and comparing them to people in the United States and in this administration. I think that is actually what put North Korea on a similar stage. No action by this administration has even remotely demonstrated a level of rise that the media did during the Olympics and through some of those stories. Francesca.
Thank you, Sarah. Yesterday, a South Korean official came out to the stakeout location and said that this meeting would be taking place by May. But you did not say that in your original statement. That's not what you said today, that a place and time has not been set. So was there some sort of a miscommunication by that? Because that is definitely what had been said by Mr. Chung yesterday evening.
No, I'm simply saying that a time and place haven't yet been set.
Okay, and so moving on from that point, can you kind of explain to us how this did end up coming about last night? Because we had the president pop his head in here at roughly close of business and say to supporters who were around that there was going to be this
Maybe
announcement.
that's y'all's close of business. Our hours must be a little later than y'all's.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you guys were all still here.
So popped his head in here, though, and said that there would be an announcement coming around 7 p.m. from the South Koreans. Then the White House ends up telling us that it will be here on this property. Then it wasn't until an hour after that that you even sent out a statement affirming the details, some of the details, not the May part, of what this announcement that President Trump would be meeting with Kim Jong Un. Can you walk us through how that all happened from the president popping in here to the fact that a South Korean official, not the White House, briefed us on our own property outside?
Again, this was the result of the South Korean delegation who had met with the North Koreans earlier in the week, coming here to give us an update on their conversations and their meetings and relaying that information and us responding to that.
So why
and
did
the
the
reason
White
for
House-
the South Koreans, I believe that was the end of your question, addressing is because those were the individuals that had directly spoken with the North Koreans, and they were the ones that were making that response.
It was the president's idea to come in here and make that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the president's idea to come into the briefing room and alert you all of an announcement coming a couple hours later. April?
On the issue of denuclearization, and going back to Peter and to Jeff, there's a black hole when it comes to intelligence as to what's really happening in North Korea. What is going to be put in place specifically to qualify and quantify what is actually there? When you talk about denuclearization, What are you denuclearizing? How many? We don't know specifically. What is in place? Are you going to employ world bodies beyond what you have? What is in place? What do you plan on doing?
That's something that's going to be determined by the intelligence community, the national security team, and not something that I would relay from the podium to all of you.
But it's very important when you have something, some kind of meeting of this nature, it's very important to understand what is in play, because he could say, I'm denuclearizing and not denuclearize everything.
I think it's very important for our intelligence communities and our national security community to understand that, and they do. And that is going to be a major part of any conversation, and something, though, I'm not going to relay at this point, certainly ahead of any conversation.
One more subject, last question. When did President Trump, after that photo, see Stormy Daniels? Did he text, email? Do you have any other information?
I don't. We've addressed this extensively, and I don't have anything else to add. Deborah?
Sarah. I have a California question. Wednesday, Governor Brown said that Donald Trump was declaring war on California. Now, I know that the president's given Jerry Brown money to his campaigns before. Have they talked on the phone recently? And when the president goes to California next week, will it be war or will it be peace?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
Will it, when the president goes to California, will it be war or will it be peace?
Look, I think if anybody is stepping out of bounds here, it would be someone who's refusing to follow federal law, which is certainly not the president. And we're going for what we hope to be an incredibly positive trip. The president's going to look at prototypes along the border and also meet with and speak to the members of our armed services. He'll be speaking with members from all 5 branches of the military, and I don't think that could be anything but a positive thing. John?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. 2 brief questions. Stating the date coming up and who might accompany the president or who's expected to accompany them, could we assume then that General McMaster will remain National Security Advisor throughout the duration of the negotiations?
I have no reason to believe otherwise.
And that means, so it could be in the fall of this year, it could be later, but he'll still be on there to advise.
Look, I don't have a crystal ball to predict the future, but the president's national security advisor is General McMaster. He's a valued member of the president's team and an important part of this process.
Anywhere.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
He's not leaving anytime soon.
Not that I'm aware of.
Sarah.
Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Thanks. Different policy question for you, different issue. 3 weeks ago, the president came out in a speech and said, we're going to have the largest nuclear force ever. Hopefully, we'll never have to use it. We're going to be so far ahead of everyone else in nuclear like you've never seen before, far in excess of anyone else. And as far as disarmament, he said, we won't lead the way. We will go along with them. The day after that, OMB Director Mulvaney came in here and said that you all were going to spend proposing to spend close to $50 billion to upgrade and enhance the nuclear arsenal. Week after that, the president or the head of Russia came out and said he has a first strike weapon. Now, whether or not you believe that he has a first strike weapon, isn't it inherently dangerous for the owners of the 2 largest nuclear arsenals to engage in brinkmanship? And why are we abandoning our role as a peacemaker in disarmament?
I don't think that's the point anyone's making. The president wants to make sure that we have the most robust and modern military. He's been in constant conversations with the Secretary of Defense and acting in large part on the recommendations of the Secretary. And I think everybody can certainly rest assured knowing that Secretary Mattis is making good decisions when it comes to how best to rebuild and modernize the military.
This is global thermal nuclear war we're talking about. You don't come back from that. Isn't it dangerous to talk about brinkmanship?
I think it's dangerous to push something that is a narrative that is not at all what this administration is pushing. We're talking about the safety and security of this country. We're talking about making sure we have the strongest military in the world so that we can operate from a place of strength, and that's what we're doing. Take one. Sorry, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to take one last question, Hallie.
Denuclearization.
Just 2 questions, Sarah, clarifying what you've said from the podium. Is there a possibility that these talks with North Korea, with Kim Jong Un, may not happen?
Look, they've got to follow through on the promises that they've made, and we want to see concrete and verifiable action on that front.
So it's possible that could not happen?
I mean, there are a lot of things possible. I'm not going to sit here and walk through every hypothetical that could exist in the world, but I can tell you that the president has accepted that invitation on the basis that we have concrete and verifiable steps.
And then second, you said from the podium, you acknowledge that the president, to follow up on April's question, knows about the arbitration involving Stormy Daniels. So does he remember speaking with his lawyer about that? Does he remember meeting Daniels back in
I've addressed
2006?
this extensively. I don't have anything else to add. Sorry, I did tell Trey I'll take one last question.
Thanks, Sarah. Quickly on North Korea, what specific steps is the president taking to prepare for this major summit with Kim Jong Un?
Look, the president has been preparing for this for quite some time. In his regular briefings with the intelligence community, with his national security team, he's going to continue doing that, and with other subject matter experts. But also, the president is, I think, the ultimate negotiator and deal maker when it comes to any type of conversation, as I think is reflected in Senator Graham's statement. And we feel very confident where we are. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.
Gun proposal you promised last week.
Can I have a nice weekend?
Hey there, and welcome to the briefing room. I'm Rick Klein, joined here by Martha Raddatz, special guest today. Great to have you, Martha. And Tara Palmieri. And there's been so much news this week. This is one of those rare Friday briefings. It's a good thing we got one. And even some news right here, Martha. A little bit of a different song from the White House. All of a sudden, this new phrase comes into the mix about verifiable actions.
Concrete and verifiable actions on the part of North Korea. That was exactly what was new today. And we didn't really get that clarified exactly what that meant. Before, he'd said he'll stop missile and nuclear tests and that he would denuclearize. This sounds like he has to denuclearize before the president will meet, but we're not really sure if that one is what he is that what the White House means. But she said several times that concrete and verifiable actions on the part of North Korea. Also said that Kim comes into talks like this in a position of weakness. I don't know how weak it is when you have a missile that is near perfection that could hit the United States with a nuclear missile on top of it.
And that is what makes this now potential meeting. It sounded like it might not happen based on this, but this potential meeting different. We know that he has this weapon already, and it's something that's in their back pocket.
If he doesn't have it already, he's about to have it.
Yeah.
And most senior officials I've talked to said that is how they approach North Korea, that he already has it. Whether he has it or not, we don't know for sure, but that's how they approach it.
Do you think they're overstating the impact of the sanctions?
I think they're taking a bite. I think the sanctions are definitely taking a bite. I think what they're understating is what this means to Kim, that he will be on the world stage, that this is something the Kim family has wanted for a long, long time, to be on the world stage with the sitting president, never been done before. So I think in that sense, it would be a win for Kim. I think one of the things you'll see, and the last time I was in Seoul, it was something that it was explained to me, is if they ever sat down, if they ever got to the point where they're negotiating, if Kim doesn't completely denuclearize, the U.S. can say he's denuclearizing, and Kim can say it's part of an arms control agreement. So it's sort of that diplomatic dance of a language thing.
So guys, let's talk for a second about what led up to this, because it was just chaos at the White House yesterday, where the president himself just pops into the briefing room and says there's going to be this announcement at 7. The South Koreans come out, extend this invitation, the president accepts it. It all comes together really quickly. The White House today is trying to say that this didn't happen overnight. This is the process that took place over a long period of time. The Secretary of State's office, they say, was involved. That really doesn't match up.
Well, it matches up in the sense that yes, they've been involved in a process a very long time. So that's accurate. I think what is not is that the fact that the president was supposed to meet today, decided to meet, yesterday, and decided just like that. Okay.
Right. He wasn't supposed to meet. It was just supposed to be the NSC meeting with the NSC advisor of Korea. President Trump pops in, he gets news of the letter, and then decides on his own with a few aides.
No letter, just a message.
The message.
Yeah.
And so decides with a few aides to walk over to the press briefing room and alert everyone about this. He was so excited, and no one could really stop him. Like the press team was scrambling. They didn't even know where they could actually let this announcement happen. Should they have officials there with the president? Should they not? I mean, one senior.
And meanwhile, John Carl's chasing after the president.
Right. We're going to ask about that in a second, which is a lot of fun. But.
Right, and they're just trying to figure out how to even stage an event like this, and or lack of event. But yeah, it seemed like Trump got some news that he liked and wanted to share it as quickly as possible, and they just weren't prepared.
And that now today they're toughening up what the circumstances would be. We think that anyway, judging from what they were talking about.
Right, and I do think that the president and the White House trying to frame this around the president's own strength. They're saying that he's getting everything that he wants in this, that it's the opposite of Kim getting everything that he wants, that actually, no, President Trump's getting what he wants because he's getting things done that other presidents haven't been able to, getting to the negotiating table.
The veneer of getting things done.
The veneer.
Until things actually happen.
John Carl joining us right now from the White House. And John, first of all, does it sound to your mind like this thing is even going to happen based on what Sarah Sanders just said?
It seemed a little less certain, didn't it, Rick?
Yeah.
Our colleague Karen Travers was joking that we shouldn't book rooms yet at the Shilla Hotel in Seoul. But the president, I got to tell you, seeing him yesterday, he was ecstatic about this. He was giddy about this. I think that there will be a lot of pressure coming from the boss to ensure that this thing comes off. But there are many ways that this can go down before they actually sit down in the same room or the same country together.
Can you reenact exactly how it happened last night, that you stumbled across the president and the vice president in the colonnade there at the White House?
Well, it was right after that moment where he ducked his head in the briefing room, without telling his press secretary, by the way, coming into the briefing room just to let everybody know there's going to be an announcement at 7 and people should pay attention. And it was coming from South Korea. And I got in the tail end of it and didn't really get a sense of what actually happened. So I kind of, the president had left and I darted up to go to the press secretary's office. And you've been here, you guys have all been here. You take that turn right to go up to the press secretary's office. To the left is the famous colonnade. And there was the president right outside the door in the colonnade with the vice president and with a couple of other officials. And he motioned me over and started telling me that South Korea was going to have an announcement and I should be there. And I said, I mean, how, where, when? I mean, in Seoul? And he told me, I said, is it about talks? He said, it's almost beyond talks, he said cryptically. And then he told me, you better give me credit. I hope you give me credit. But very interesting encounter.
He's getting credit. He's getting credit.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And Martha, you and I were talking about this earlier, that there's kind of an immediate pile-on of criticism of how could you do something in such a willy-nilly fashion like this. This is not how diplomacy works. You have talks about talks. You lay out what's going to be done. You have officials work out a preliminary agreements, and then eventually at the very end of that process, the principals sit down. He's starting right off the bat here, if it actually happens, president to president.
Backwards, a little bit backwards there, but it's different. And as we talked about earlier too today, John, the other efforts have failed. So We'll see, first of all, if they actually have talks and where they go from there.
And Martha, what have you heard from folks in South Korea or elsewhere in the world right now reacting to this? The South Koreans were part of this announcement yesterday. Are they skeptical about this?
Well, I think it depends on what side of this issue you're on. I mean, certainly the hardliners think they're being too nice to Kim Jong Un. Let's remember he is a murderous dictator. Horrible, horrible human rights abuses. And there are, of course, a lot of people who have relatives there and who've come down there themselves who can tell you tales when you're over there. And others are thrilled that President Moon has had this thaw in relations with North Korea that obviously started just before the Olympics.
Like you said, the president gets credit. It's a big moment, regardless.
It is a big moment. We're all paying attention. You betcha. And a surprising moment.
We'll let you pay more attention and let you go and get back to work.
Okay,
I know
great.
You'll be on World News tonight with a lot more. Thank you, Martha. Another big headline developing today out of the White House. The storm of Stormy continues.
Right.
Tara, the latest revelation is that Michael Cohen used letterhead and an email address that was connected to the Trump organization.
Right.
While this was going on. That's a pretty major deal because he's made it sound like this was all a private thing.
Right. It's inching closer and closer to the president and what he knew about this payment, because they basically said Michael Cohen just paid $130,000 out of his own money for his buddy. And how much can you really believe in that example? And once you see a check, and And you see that the letterhead for the memo sent on the check is from the Trump organization. It's got to make you wonder, how much did the president not know about what the resources his own company were using?
Do we still have John Carl with us? John, are you still there?
I'm still here, Rick. Absolutely. I wouldn't leave you early.
Okay, good to hear. The stormy storm. Tell us about the White House on this. They've been very consistent in not answering a specific series of questions around the president's knowledge here. As this gets closer, does the pressure build on them? It seems like there's likely to be an interview with Stormy Daniels, if you believe social media and photos that are out there. It might be happening as soon as this weekend. It sounds like this is just going to keep getting louder for a while.
It is, and the story was out there for quite some time before it was actually even asked in a White House briefing. I first asked about it to Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah a couple of weeks ago after Michael Cohen had acknowledged making the payment. And I got, this is old news, and I did point out that it actually wasn't old news, that now we have an acknowledgement from the president's own lawyer he had made this payment. So will you ask the president about it? The only promise I extracted out of the deputy press secretary was that he would get back to me. He hasn't directly gotten back to me yet, Rick. I'm sure Raj is working on it very hard. But the questions will continue to come, and the White House wants to pretend that this is an old story, but it's it's not an old story. We're finding out more about what actually went down, and a $130,000 payment just before the election raises all kinds of questions. And now, we're finally going to hear from Stormy Daniels what was behind it, and apparently part of that story is intimidation, an effort to keep her silent.
All right, John, we're going to let you get back to the beat, but under one condition, if you run across the president or the vice president again, you got to come back and tell us about it.
Okay, I'll be back. You got
Sounds
it.
good. And we know you'll be hosting.
Tara.
Thanks.
Hosting the Sunday
week.
show
Give me a plug.
this week.
Come on.
I'm giving you a shameless plug. You'll be hosting this week on Sunday, so we will all tune in live to watch that. Thank you, John.
All right. We'll see you.
So, Tara, let's do a little cleanup duty because this was the week of Sam Nunberg's big cable play. It was the week of Gary Cohn's resignation. It was a week of a lot of Stormy Daniels pieces. We lived through all of this. We also lived through a Dreamer deadline. There's some inaction to talk about on guns. And there was also very big news that happened yesterday with steel tariffs. Economy rattling type of news.
Right.
The president going against the advice of his own party. And it does seem connected, to my mind, to the staff dysfunction and chaos inside that White House. That this came out the way it did even just 24 hours ago.
That is the right way to be looking at this. I've been told from a senior administration official that basically Chief of Staff Kelly has become so weakened from this Porter scandal. Really, the feeling of the White House was that a lot of the aides feared Kelly. They thought that he had the backing of the president 100%. And once he lost that backing, you could kind of walk all over him, and Trump is encouraging that through the way that he's putting him down and the way that he's allowed his allies to trash him in the news, like you've seen Scaramucci doing. And so basically, he's lost his fangs, and Trump can do whatever he wants. And also, the process is broken down. You don't have Porter there, the staff secretary, showing him the documents, making the day run the way the day is supposed to run. Instead, you have a freewheeling president who enjoys a freewheeling schedule, but he's got hundreds of employees now, an entire federal government to manage, and clearly he's doing it on his own time.
And I loved your tweet last night after the president popped in the briefing room that sometimes the biggest leaker in the White House, the president of the United States himself.
Exactly. I mean, one aide told me that they were working on some sort of announcement of a policy proposal, and they had to consciously not reveal some of the surprise details to the president because they didn't want him to leak it out before, because there needs to be momentum. And so it's not always on his schedule and his press unveiling. So
we may see more surprises like the tariffs, like the North Korea announcement,
Right.
because of the staffing issues.
Exactly.
A big political weekend. The president's going to be headed out to Pennsylvania tomorrow, Western Pennsylvania. Great timing, not coincidental timing around the steel tariffs. Very popular in that part of the state. Trying desperately to win this special election. This is a district that President Trump carried by 20 points.
Wow.
20 points, a little more than a year ago. And all of the Republicans that I've talked to are absolutely panicked that the Republican candidate is going to lose. The president's calculation, Tara, is that he's going to get blamed if they lose anyway, so might as well try to own it and try to win it. It backfired a bit in Alabama.
I just love how President Trump dives first into all of these controversies, into boards that he could potentially lose. Of course, he spins it one way or another, as we saw with Roy Moore. But this could be considered another referendum on the president and a reflection of what we are about to see in 2018. So, I'm sure he'll enjoy the victory lap in Pittsburgh, but what does that mean down the line?
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on Tuesday night and the election there. Connor Lamb, the Democrat running against Rick Saccone. As we said, President Trump will be there tomorrow to campaign, and we're going to be on the air all night on Tuesday night, live from that congressional district out in western Pennsylvania as part of our 18 for 18 coverage. It is a big night, and we will be there starting at 8 o'clock when the polls close in Pennsylvania. That does it for an extremely busy news week. Tara, any closing thoughts for you on what we learned this week?
Well, I realize that tariffs, while they were supposed to rattle the world economy, President Trump found something bigger than that. And that is now the big story, is North Korea. Security, tariffs, Stormy Daniels, Nunberg. I mean, this would have been months and months and months of news cycles, and yet it's been for 2 days, 3 days?
Yeah, I had Billy Joel in my mind all through the week. We didn't start the fire. Like, Sam Nunberg, Gary Cohn, Michael Cohen, North Korea, South Korea, and then all the way through the fact that the tariffs and the Korean announcement ends up being the bigger thing said. It is a classic example to my mind of something we've seen over and over again from the president. He operates in chaos. And when all of these things are popping, sometimes he is at his most comfortable. That is when he feels more comfortable to throw something out there, mix things up, and you could tell the president is enjoying this moment, despite all of these things that are swirling.
Because he feels like he's in control. And everyone else is catching up. And it's just amazing to see how long is it sustainable for him to have a weakened chief of staff. We saw that from his last chief of staff, Reince Priebus. If Kelly becomes just like Reince Priebus, is he going to come again and try to get a strong man to try to control him? Or is he just going to say, you know what, I don't need staff?
There you go. All right, a busy Friday here on The Briefing Room. Thank you for joining us. Download the ABC News app. For Tara Palmieri, I'm Rick Klein. Catch us next week right here on The Briefing Room.